What's good, guys, and welcome to another Industry Insider interview here on the FiveTwenty Collective Podcast. This interview is being sponsored by the bookkeeper247.com. Go check them out at tbk247.com now, as the Bookkeeper 24/7 is changing the culture for God and becoming the voice in Christian hip-hop. That's tbk247.com. Joining me now is a man that you may simply know as Z. He's the editor-in-chief for DJ Booth. He's the co-founder of Audio Mac. He's also a fantastic follow on Twitter. So joining me now on the Trackstars Podcasting Network phone line is Mr. Brian Zisook. What's good, sir?
Eric, thank you for having me. That was a wonderful introduction.
Oh, man, we tried. I hope I said the last name correct. I know I've been practicing, trying to get it right.
No, you're good. You're good.
So how are you doing? I know it's been kind of a crazy time. Obviously, the last couple of years, and the music industry's been adjusting. How are things going for you?
You know what? No one ever asks me that question when I'm a guest. Everyone just jumps straight into the business, and so I really appreciate that personal touch. And to answer your question, I'm doing fine. You know, I can't complain. I'm fortunate enough to not only have a job, but have a job that I love and that I'm excited to go to every day. And that's a lot more than so many people can say, especially over the past 16 to 18 months. I also have my health, God willing. So, and as do my family members. If you have a job and you have a roof over your head and you have your health, these days, I don't think you could ask for much more. So to answer your question, man, I'm good. Thank you. How are you?
Man, we're okay. We've kind of been the same way. The family's done well. Getting ready to kick off another school year at my day job. I'm a high school teacher, so we're getting ready to get back into the swing of that. But all right. It's been a little crazy this summer, but a lot of good music, to get us through. So I can't complain about that. And man, I find your story really interesting, and I want to make sure we kind of highlight just kind of some of that background for people who may not be familiar with it, right? So you started off in radio, or you were looking at going into radio anyway, if I'm not mistaken, like college radio, is that right?
Yeah, so my journey really begins at Illinois State University. I went to school for a degree in broadcast journalism with specialty in radio. I wanted to be on air. I wanted to be a DJ or a show host. And everything that I did for 4 years of college, I thought was going to put me in a position to probably naively get a primetime big city market job right out of school. And I actually got a morning show production gig that I started 2 weeks after I graduated from Illinois State back in 2006. And it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. And that happened. And it was an experience for me. At the time, I had to completely shift my schedule around. Morning show radio is 4 a.m. to noon every day. So I was up at 3 a.m., out the door at 3:30. We're talking about going to bed at like 7:30 at night while it's still light outside. And through that experience, I didn't really see friends much. I wasn't a very good family member because I was always tired and in a pretty bad mood. I was already losing most of my hair, and the rest of the hair on my head just decided to get off the ship at that point. And so I realized that for some people, a job in entertainment like radio or television or traditional media like newsprint or magazines, for some, great length to pursue their dream job in that field. And within 8 months of doing morning show radio as in production, I realized it just wasn't for me. And I didn't want to stick around doing something I knew at the time was making me unhappy. I was doing DJ Booth as a hobby on the side all the while. And at that point, when I exited radio, I called up what would become my business partner, just a friend at the time, Dave Mackley. And I said, Dave, what do you think about me doing DJ Booth full time? I don't want to go get another radio job. This would be my job. And he goes, well, if you don't want to pursue another job and do this full time, by all means. He goes, but I'm not quitting my day job just quite yet. And then lo and behold, less than 2 years later, we were generating enough page views and creating enough awareness and generating enough revenue off of those page views for this to be my full-time job, and for Dave to leave his job and do it full-time. And so that was 2008. And so 13 years later, I've never looked back.
That's awesome. And you kind of shifted maybe the focus of DJ Booth a little bit in order to do that, right? Because DJ Booth ends up becoming this premier blog kind of in the height of like the hip hop and music blog like era, right? And what's really cool about it is that it's been able to sustain where a lot of others haven't. But that wasn't like the original focus, if I'm not mistaken.
You're right. No, it was not. So DJ Booth, in its inception, was very niche. We appealed strictly to the DJ community. We would publish turntable, mixer, headphone reviews, run DJ playlists. And then very shortly after I connected with Dave, I pitched him on the idea of expanding the platform to appeal to a more broad demo and running short form and long form editorial, interviews, album reviews, a little bit of news coverage sprinkled in. And that was our ticket to, reaching a much larger audience. And over time, we recognized some of the trend lines in editorial online. And so we pivoted multiple times over the last 13 years, eventually landing on long-form editorial. We don't publish anywhere near as much content as most other platforms in our space do. We believe in a quality over quantity methodology, meaning we're not going to run 50 stories a day, 5 days a week. We're going to run 2 or 3 stories a day, Monday through Friday, in hopes that our audience recognizes that the content that we're producing is of greater value because it's more substantial. There's more thought put into it. The interviews show that there was more time and attention put into the questions rather than just regurgitation of whatever is, trending on Twitter.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And then one thing that I would really like to know is what connected you to hip hop? Because I think when I talk to a lot of people who have been in radio and stuff, they may have a preferred style of music, but they are kind of into a little bit everything. And I'm assuming that is probably the case for you, but it seems like you really have this connection to hip hop that's made you be able to be successful in your endeavors with DJ Booth and then leading up to Audio Mac. Like, what was that connection for you?
I think, I'm fortunate, right? So I grew up in a household where we were a very musical family. My dad was in a choir growing up. My mom played guitar. My uncle, so my mom's brother, is a musician by trade. He's a flutist and plays like 3 or 4 different instruments. My grandfather was a singer, and his wife, my grandmother, may they both rest in peace, was his pianist. And as I grew up, my parents played everything in the house. There was never a time where there wasn't music being played in the house. And at a very early age, I became obsessed almost with old school Motown, R&B, blues, even some gospel. And all of that sort of led me down a rabbit hole. And, all that material is what was being sampled in hip hop. And so it was very fun to me to place these original records in their new forms. And I just took a liking to the storytelling and the imagery and the escapism. And if you were to ask a lot of these creators, these practitioners, their purpose for becoming an artist, I think you'd hear the same reasoning. The escapism, being able to storytell in a truly unique way. And that led me to the creative path that ultimately got me into school and put me on a track to pursue journalism and radio. And then obviously the rest, I could say now in hindsight, is history. But yeah, that's the genesis there.
There you go. Awesome. Well, so you got into DJ Booth. You guys built that up. It's a popular, like we said, one of the leading blogs during the height of that time. And then from there, you developed into what is now, you guys created Audio Mac. And what's kind of crazy for me and talking with people within like the Christian hip hop, the Christian rap space, is how many people, for Audio Mac, it's almost like it's a new platform for them. They may have heard of it, they haven't checked it out, or maybe they've only looked at it a couple of times. And I know it's gotten popular over, the last couple of years for sure. We've seen a little bit of a boom in this space with Audio Mac, but it's been around for quite a while. What was that process like whenever you guys started thinking about doing a streaming service?
Well, yeah, it certainly is in a place today that we didn't foresee back in 2011 when we started to birth the idea of it. At the time, DJ Booth got into hosting mixtapes and albums and EPs for a lot of hip-hop artists who were haphazardly releasing them online using file sharing services. And as we all remember from back in the day, Zippy Share and Lime Links and Mega Upload, not the greatest tools to disseminate your work freely on the internet. And so, whether it be malware or spyware on the family computer or pop-ups with viruses or the links expiring, we identified a problem. And the solution was to offer DJ Booth as a means to host projects for artists so that they knew these links would not expire. They wouldn't have to incur the cost of servers or bandwidth, and they had a dedicated space to direct people to download and or stream their music. But, we did that for a few years, and we recognized very quickly that was not our core competency. We were not, as a website, set up to become a streaming service. We didn't have the infrastructure in place. We sort of built it as we went. And so Audio Mac was birthed as a solution that originally presented itself in what we were doing at DJ Booth to fix this problem for artists who wanted a way to share their mixtapes freely online. We're talking 10 years later now. We launched in 2012, but ideated in 11. We reached 20 million monthly active users globally. We are a top streaming app in 5 countries in Africa. We're a top 10 music streaming app on the free side in the United States. So our growth has been considerable over 10 years, but really over the past 3.5. And I feel like we're not anywhere close to where we want to be. Now, if the next question you'd be asking, Eric, is where do you want to be? I think the two things that we're focused on is artist discovery and artist education. Discovery first, anyone who uses Apple Music, Spotify, Tidal, Amazon, etc., you probably know by now most of the most valuable real estate within these apps solely dedicated to major label players and the most popular artists of the time. They almost encourage users to become passive, meaning I take my phone out of my pocket, I press play on an artist or on a playlist that I'm already familiar with, and I either stick my phone back in my pocket or I skip over to Instagram or Twitter or some social media network and I browse while listening in the background. So I'm not actively looking for new artists. Music is listening experience being done in the background. We are fundamentally changing the way people are listening. Our audience is primarily made up of lean forward and active listeners, meaning they are trying to find artists that they did not previously know about before they came to the app. Part of our rationale is by mixing in the new with the unknown, we make it easy for users to press play on those artists with which they were previously unfamiliar. And then we incorporated World, which is our editorial arm that we pivoted from DJ booth, that provides context, right? So you found this new artist in a playlist, but who are they? You're now hoping that the user leaves the streaming world and navigates over to Google or social media to find out more, to follow them. By providing context in the form of traditional editorial in the same space that the streaming experience is happening, you now can discover an artist and immediately find out more about them, follow them, and that it sort of fundamentally changes the dynamic between the user and the artist at the most important point in the discovery process. And then the second part is education. A large base on AudioMac is DIY bedroom artists. These are artists who are pre-distribution, pre-label. They're just trying to figure out whether or not they're interested enough to pursue this seriously. And we want to be a beacon of trust. We want to provide them with a litany of resources, and so that they understand the shape-shifting nature of this industry and the ecosystem that they're operating in or looking to operate in. So that is it in a nutshell.
Man, and that is awesome. And again, guys, on the phone line with me, it is Mr. Brian Zisook, Z, from AudioMac. So obviously, sir, you got, like you said, Spotify, Apple Music, all these big-time players in the streaming music world. And AudioMac's like getting right up there with them now. And it, you know, that doesn't even seem to be the intent of what you guys did, but here you find yourself doing that. One thing that I've heard people say watching like some YouTube videos and different things that I really want to get you to weigh in on, because I find it kind of funny. I hear people kind of referring to AudioMac at times as like SoundCloud 2.0. And I kind of just like roll my eyes and laugh a little bit, because while I kind of get what they're saying, I feel like you guys deliver a much better platform that truly cares about artists, like you've been saying, than SoundCloud. Like, what do you, I just wonder, like, I'm sure you've heard it, like, what goes through your mind when you hear that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not bothered by it. You know, there was a period of time where SoundCloud was a great platform for artist discovery, and an entire generation, in particular, of hip-hop artists were birthed based on the traction that they were able to generate on that platform. So to certainly take nothing away from it. I get the comparison because unlike Apple or Spotify, etc., we are a hybrid model, meaning we're UGC and catalog. So we have licensing agreements with over 170 distribution companies and record labels. But if you don't want to go through a label or a distributor, you can create an account and upload directly. And so there's a lot of similarities there with SoundCloud. I think the key difference, and I always like to highlight this, is we don't charge artists anything. We never have, and we never will. We believe that the artist and creator community who uses our platform is an extension of our marketing team. And we would never charge our own marketing team to do their job. If an artist sees success on our platform, the hope is that they scream it from the rooftops. And, you know, they're doing the job of our marketing team probably more effectively. SoundCloud will charge creators for access to advanced analytics, storage space. Basically, if you want a pro account, you're going to have to cough up money either annually or monthly. That's not our business model. We want to give the creator community all of the tools that we possibly can, and for free. They do not have to pay anything at all. Monthly, annually, nothing. They can upload as much content as they'd like. They can review their creator dashboard 50 times a day, and they will never, ever be charged a dime. And so I like to highlight that because, to me, if you're just starting off a creative career, you probably don't have a robust budget to begin with. And so you're looking for platforms and people who believe in you. And there's nothing like charging someone at that stage of your career to show them that you don't really believe in them. You just want them to utilize your service. So we're not going to do that.
Yes, sir. Yes. And for a space like Christian hip hop, Christian rap, you know, we talk about independent artists. Well, the truth is, in this space, the majority are independent artists, right? Like, there's not a lot of guys that are established, that are on big labels, the percentages is very small there. So most guys are trying to figure this out, and girls, obviously, trying to figure out, how do I get that awareness? And I feel like so many of them are missing out on opportunities like Audio Mac, because if we're going to be truthful about it from me to you, there's a little bit of laziness involved. It's like, if we're not, if DistroKid or TuneCore, whatever distribution company they use, if they're not putting their music on these platforms for them, then their music just isn't there. It's being totally missed out on that opportunity. What is your advice for indie artists, and why do they need to be leveraging Audio Mac, and maybe even to a further extent other, kind of not the most popular of platforms that are out there, to build their fan base? Because they're missing out on an audience that's there that could be listening to their music. Like, what do you say to those independent artists?
Right. So you make several great points, and I'll try to touch on all of them effectively. So first, and this is coming from a guy who co-founded a streaming platform, artists should have their material on everywhere music is being heard. And so it would be insincere of me to say, yeah, make sure to get your music on Audio Mac. Don't worry about anywhere else. Every single DSP, so digital service provider, stores and platforms, if there's an audience on those platforms, you want your music to be available. I always give the equivalency of, if you're a distributor for a food or beverage company, any place that sells food or beverage, you want shelf space there. Because if that's somewhere that people go to buy food and beverage, you want your product available. The same thing goes for music. And so, for sure, whether you're going through a distributor or you have to manually upload, make sure your music's available. Let's talk about the laziness part. I totally get it. It's hard enough being an artist. It's hard enough being an independent artist who probably has to toggle between their desire to pursue a creative career while simultaneously holding down a regular 9-to-5. And so, any shortcuts that they could take to not have to do additional work, I totally understand. To that, I would say, if you don't work with a distributor, whom we have a deal with at Audio Mac, the process in which you're going to create an account probably takes 5 minutes. And the upload process, let's say for a 12-track album, probably takes 5 minutes. So I think people are often overwhelmed by the idea that something will take far longer than it will actually take. You can get an account set up, profile and all, a project uploaded in under 10 minutes. And so hopefully that will quell some of the fears that people have or creators have, that this will take longer than they have to give. All of that said, we have a account linking distribution deal with DistroKid, meaning if you are distributing to DistroKid, you can now link your DistroKid account to Audio Mac, and DistroKid will deliver your titles to Audio Mac, and you will be able to monetize your streams through your DistroKid account like you would for any other platform. We're in the process of doing the exact same thing with TuneCore and Amuse. And like I said earlier during this call, we have over 170 content partnerships. And so there is a litany of distributors, both big and small. We're talking like mom and pop shop operations, 5-10 artists, very niche, versus these like broad spectrum distributors like 1RPM who do 10, 12, 15,000 releases a week. So there are immense number of options.
Awesome. And I will attest to it, guys. Like, we have our podcast set up on Audio Mac, and the upload, the creation, all that, super easy. And one thing that I love that you guys do is you don't just put it all on the artists or the creators to come up with ways to promote their content either. You actually give some tools. Like, I love how whenever we upload a new episode, we get an email with a graphic, now on Audio Mac, and it looks fabulous, that we can share on our social medias. I mean, I feel like that's something that's a little unique for you guys as well. Like, what made you guys want to take that extra step to provide, tools like that to artists?
Yeah, great question, Eric. And it goes back to what I said earlier. We understand that at a very early stage of a career, an artist's budget is going to be thin. And so if they have a finite amount of money with which to spend on their craft and hopefully a career, one of those things is like graphic design and digital marketing. We want to be able to provide those resources. And so, like you said, when you upload a new release to the platform, you're going to get custom graphics that our system spits out that you can use for social media. These are assets to help you promote whatever your new piece of content is. If your podcast, your song is selected for trending, you're going to get a notification email to the email that you use to register for an account. And that email is going to include graphics saying, congratulations, this work is now trending on AudioMac. If you reach milestones, so if you get 1,000 plays, 10,000 plays, 100,000 plays, you're going to receive a notification email with custom graphics auto-generated by our system celebrating that milestone, and then you can use those graphics for the purpose of digital marketing on social media. When the artists and creators who use AudioMac win, we win by default. I could scream from the mountaintops what a great platform we have. It's just going to be more believable if a creator hears it from a fellow creator. That's just the honest truth.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And you mentioned earlier about the reach that AudioMac has been able to develop worldwide, right? Where you are getting creators that are using it across the globe. And I'm really interested, like, did you guys go out and seek that? Because I know for a fact, I've been talking with a guy named Free from Nigeria, and the Christian hip hop space in Nigeria is growing, and it's becoming, more popular. There's more guys doing it. And he told me during our talks, like, hey, AudioMac's one of the prime platforms that we use. Like, was that something that just kind of happened naturally for you guys, or did you intentionally go and look to try to build those relationships and build that interest in places outside of the U.S.?
Great question. So we saw the traction that was building up in the African music market. They're still growing, and they have so much more to grow. They don't have the infrastructure in Africa, musically speaking, that obviously exists here in the United States. And so once we saw that our platform was beginning to really grow in the African music market, we doubled, tripled, and quadrupled down there. We set up an office in Lagos, and we have boots on the ground, and we hired, and we ran marketing campaigns locally. And I think part of our success is due to understanding that their infrastructure is in a lot of locations not anywhere close to as robust as it is in the States, meaning cell phone technology is a bit older, and they do not have the same type of data plans that we have in the States, so they have limited data. They don't have access to Wi-Fi as easy as you might see here in the States. And so one of the core functions of the AudioMac app experience is offline download, caching. And so for those in the African music market who have those restrictions, right, they have limited data and they don't have ease of access to Wi-Fi, they can download the music to listen to offline without fear that those limitations will hinder that experience, which is huge. And that really helped elevate us in that space. We are a top 5 app in 5 countries in Africa. And I don't mean top 5 just in the music vertical. I mean top 5 period, like next to Instagram and Facebook and WhatsApp. And so for a lot of Africans, AudioMac is the music streaming service, in particular in Nigeria, where we're a top 5 app right now.
That's amazing. That is really, really amazing. I love what they're doing. And I know that you guys are making a difference because I'm hearing it, from the few people I'm connected with down there. So that is
Love
awesome.
Love it.
One more question before shifting gears a little bit here, as far as like on the music side of it. So just for a smaller like subgenre like Christian hip hop, right? Where we have grown, and this space has grown, especially over the last like decade, compared to where it was, 20, 30 years ago. But it's still a small subgenre of hip hop, right? And it's looking to get more relevance and build and attract more attention from listeners. Like, what would be your suggestion for utilizing platforms like AudioMac in order to help further that growth? And how can the people that are more like behind the scenes, like us and with a platform that's in the media and whatnot, potentially help educate our artists in that?
Well, I think the most important thing, and you hit on this earlier, is a large swath of the Christian hip hop scene is independent. Now, independent can mean a variety of things, so we always have to be very clear. Independent could mean truly going at it independent, not even working with a distributor independent, or it can mean being signed to an independent label or having a distribution deal, remaining independent in that you maintain the majority stake of your master ownership. I think what it comes down to is we have become a platform that is pro-discovery. And so if you're looking to build a fan base, you of course want to make sure that your music is available. And I think our audience, our ever-growing audience, has shown the propensity to press play on genres and artists that they're not familiar with. We have seen a tremendous amount of success integrating Latin and reggaeton and dancehall, and of course Afrobeats. And so I don't think that the perception for a lot of artists, which is there isn't a place for my music here, is true. And if that is what is holding you back from making your music available on AudioMac or any other platform, tell that voice inside your head to be quiet and take a leap.
Awesome. And so another thing that is really cool that you guys have done is that you have created to where podcasts can get involved with AudioMac as well. And I know I mentioned earlier, we have our podcast on AudioMac, and one thing that we're seeing when it comes to like CHH Media and websites and that kind of stuff is we're seeing more of podcasts, popping up all the time, right? It's becoming a very popular way to use stuff, as it is, just across the board. Talk about what AudioMac can do for podcasts and making sure that your show is on there also.
Love that question. So we make it really easy. You can set up through using an RSS feed. It doesn't get any easier than that. And then obviously once the podcasts are ported over to your account, you can manually edit the titles and the information if it doesn't appear as it should. The podcast space is interesting because Spotify over the past few years has obviously doubled and tripled down on non-music content, in particular podcasts, since they don't have to pay royalties on it. Our interest in getting into the podcast space relates specifically to the tenet that I mentioned earlier, which is artist education. And so the podcast that we predominantly feature, that we give the best real estate to, if you will, in the trending bar, in the podcast section on social media, are podcasts that are geared toward helping our creator community and allowing them to look at AudioMac as this resource for information and knowledge.
Awesome. So I think that's another thing, though, that, whenever you talk about like Spotify, and them hosting podcasts, yes, they, bought Anchor and all this different stuff. But still, it's hard for discovery to happen, I feel like. But you have this platform that's set up already for artist discovery. And that was something that really intrigued me whenever we were looking at putting our podcast on AudioMac was, okay, I want to see where you guys are going for podcasters. Is there going to be that same level of discoverability available where it's more, a little bit more of an organic process? How do you see it just like developing? Like, what are you guys' plans for specifically the podcast for the future here?
I think our initial plans, as it relates to podcasting, is to develop more in-house podcasts. We had some grand plans in that area just prior to the start of the pandemic, and those got put on hold for obvious reasons. Hopefully now, as we come out of the pandemic, we start to revert back to the plans that we had in place beforehand. As far as discoverability for the greater podcast community, it's hard, right? Because especially in a mobile setting, there's only so much real estate on your screen, and it's hard to give the same time and attention both to music and podcasts. It's something that we've thought long and hard about. I don't think that we've done a great job there, but we're not a finished product, and nor do we ever plan to be. And hopefully in the near future, we can do a better job of integrating podcasts to increase discoverability. But as far as the podcast community is concerned, I think the focus should be on figuring out who is your audience, and then developing some great branding and visual aesthetics that match the content of the podcast so that you're actually able to visually market it correctly in these spaces.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah, because the one thing I've heard, in the past is with podcasts, it's real hard because you put out a show, it goes to your RSS feed, and it just kind of sits there, and it can die there if you're not, pushing it. So, and maybe not everyone has the same amount of money to put behind marketing and this kind of stuff. So it's, I know for us, it's been a matter of, okay, what can we try? Where can we maybe go outside the box a little bit? And, I'm just grateful for, a platform like AudioMac and others that allow us to, dabble in that, and try it out and see, okay, how can I use this tool, that could maybe, connect me with some new people. So thanks for that setup. And I'm, definitely looking forward to seeing, what could continue to develop, and how we can, keep on, reaching new listeners with a platform like an AudioMac. So I know we talked about, what's kind of on the horizon on the podcasting side of it, for just like in general, like what's coming up for AudioMac that people need to be paying attention to. What are you able to share with us?
Well, there's a lot I can't share, but I'd love to. I think first, I'd be remiss if I didn't remind your listeners that earlier this year, we expanded our monetization program. And so AMP, which stands for the AudioMac Monetization Program, is now available to a worldwide audience. Previously, it was only available for artists who are eligible in the United States, Canada, and the UK. So what is AMP? AMP is a direct monetization program that allows creators to, once eligible, apply for monetization and be paid directly by AudioMac. So we're not cutting out distributors. We're just like pre-distribution. So if you're not ready to go wide, right, or you have a deal with the distributor but only for a particular territory or market, and you'd like to just work with AudioMac directly, you now have that ability. Now, we're not a distribution company, meaning if you apply for monetization through AudioMac, we are not going to place your music in other stores. All it means is that the music that you upload to your AudioMac account will be able to generate revenue. So it will be royalty bearing, which is very important for artists at a very early stage because you can take that money and then reinvest it into your career. The other thing that I'm really excited about is AudioMac World. So earlier this year, we took AudioMac World, which is previously just a website and a mobile on mobile, and integrated it into the in-app experience. So now we have a traditional editorial arm where our users can in one place listen to and read about music. Our focus is, like I said earlier, our artist discovery and artist education. And so, if you're a superstar artist or you have, 500 followers on Instagram, it doesn't matter. If you have a story to tell, your music connects with our editorial team, and you have a presence on the platform and you're performing well, you can be eligible. And so I know a lot of artists will reach out and say, but I don't have, this many Twitter followers, or I don't have this many TikTok followers, but I'm doing well on AudioMac. Okay, great. Well, that by itself makes you eligible for consideration for us to highlight your work in original editorial form in the AudioMac app experience. So, yeah, monetization and world, two things that we launched this year that we're really happy about.
Awesome. With the monetization process, can you give just like a quick overview of what that looks like as far as like how the artist gets set up with that?
Absolutely. So the first hurdle to applying for monetization is authentication. Basically, you are who you say that you are. So in order to become authenticated, you have to have your entire profile set up, meaning a photo present, links to your social media, website if you have one, at least 2 uploads. They have to be original uploads, meaning no remixes, no freestyles, no covers. And you need to have at least 25 followers on your page. Once you've accomplished all of this, you can apply for authentication. It's a very simple review on our end. We will vet you to make sure that everything checks out. And assuming it does, you get a gray check mark. Once you are authenticated, you are now eligible to apply for monetization. So that's basically the first step in that path. Monetization application looks a lot like the authentication application. It takes anywhere from 48 hours to 7 days, roughly, for us to review those applications. And once you apply, there's nothing else you have to do as a creator. Once we review it to determine that everything on your page checks out, meaning that the work that you have present is eligible to be monetized. For example, you're not recording music over someone else's music. It's not a remix or a cover of someone else's work. Then you would be AMP eligible. And then moving forward, you could check a box, and that box will allow you to set up each individual release for monetization. It's even easier to understand doing it than it is listening to me explain it. I promise you.
Definitely. Well, Z, I appreciate you hopping on the FiveTwenty podcast with us and sharing this information. Like I said at the beginning of the interview, I follow you on Twitter, and your tweets are some of the favorite ones that come across my timeline. Where do people follow you and make sure they're soaking up the knowledge that you share just on social media?
Great question, and thank you very much both for the praise and the follow, Eric. Your listeners can follow me on Twitter at DJBoothEIC. That's DJBOOTHEIC. It is the only social media platform that I'm on. I'm not against Facebook or Instagram. I just don't have the time for them. And so Twitter is the one-stop shop. And your listeners can also email me. I make myself very available to the public. My email address is z@audiomac.com. It's listed in my Twitter bio. I always encourage the creator community to make themselves accessible, so I would be a hypocrite if I didn't make myself accessible as well. And I want to thank you again for having me on the podcast. Great questions and great conversation.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it. Hopefully our paths can cross again in the future. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of more knowledge that Z has that the rest of us need to hear. So maybe we can make that happen down the road. But I appreciate the time.
That would be great.
Awesome.
You're very welcome.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, guys, again, Brian Zisook, AudioMac, and DJ Booth. Make sure you go check it out, especially if you're an artist. Make sure you have your music on the AudioMac platform because it's fabulous. I love it. So, again, guys, we want to give a shout out to the Bookkeeper 24/7 for sponsoring this interview, as well as the rest of our episode sponsors. And we will catch you guys again next month.